I got boots, I'm good.
Sure.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
I don't mind being boots.
This is recent.
Yeah, I remember actually about the downstairs.
Oh, really?
The copies, just because I knew that this was coming up.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. Was this year? you think? Wow.
In some towns have like 4 different bins too, recycling of like different ones. One for paper, one for like regular trash.
Well, you would think that if they're going to use 64 gallon container, that you would have to put that out every week.
Which means that my daughter stopped wearing diapers, and we don't make much trash. So we could probably go 2 weeks.
You're not live.
All set, George?
Yep.
Thank you. All right, welcome to the November 12th meeting of the Town of Durham, Maine Planning Board. All members are present. This is a non-voting or won't be voting during this meeting. It's an informal public meeting. If you could just stand for the
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So this is a continuation of our October 22nd planning meeting. Annually, we amend or enhance sections of the land use ordinance to bring them into either legal compliance or supplement sections that need help. This year, we hired a consultant to assist with some codification issues. Our town planner, Mr. George Tavares, has been working very closely with that consultant on these codification issues. We as a board have been working through these proposed updates since the spring. And tonight, Mr. Tavares will present several of the proposed administrative proposed updates. After the presentation, each section will be opened up to the floor for public comment, for any clarification and meaningful dialogue. Any substantial changes to these sections that we discussed tonight will be incorporated and sent to the select board for their review. This is currently planned to be the last informal public hearing regarding the land use ordinance updates. Once we hear back from the select board, there'll be a more formal public hearing prior to the town meeting in the summer. So, any amendments to the agenda? Are we good to go with this right now? Okay, yep, great. So if anybody in the public wishes to make a public comment, please stand up, speak loudly, clearly, state your name and address. And we'll head from there. So, Mr. Tavares, if you wouldn't mind moving forward with the agenda.
Sure, Mr. Chairman, members of the board and public. I'm here tonight to present some of the research and proposal of the planning board on what we're calling proposed administrative changes. And I'll just walk you through the process as Brian outlined. The town has hired a company that does ordinances for, I think, around 32 communities in Maine, and the purpose is to digitize that ordinance so that it's much more workable and available on the town website than it is now. Sorry. Let me get that. There we go. So the consultant has already completed what they're calling an editorial and legal analysis, where they look through all of the text of the ordinance and they identified typos and grammatical errors in areas where the local ordinance is not in compliance with state law. And they came up with a list of 139 different points that needed to be addressed. So last summer I did work with a consultant and provided responses for some of the typographical and grammatical things, such as it's inconsistent on reference to the select board. Selectmen, select board use several different terms. So they're looking to get consistency throughout the ordinance on things like that. And then, as I mentioned, there are areas where the town is not in compliance, particularly in the area of affordable housing and mobile home parks, those sorts of things. So we're looking at the need to make changes to the ordinance to address those legal issues. As part of the project, the planning board sees the opportunity here to address what we're calling minor policy issues. So these are things where they do involve policy, but it's not along the order of magnitude of what the town has done in recent years on solar farms and battery energy storage systems. And we did hold a public meeting on October 22nd, where the town presented those minor policy issues, and both those and the administrative changes that we're going to talk about tonight will be treated as a separate warrant article from the codification itself. So the codification will be limited to the technical and grammatical issues, and anything that kind of raises itself to an issue of the questioning policy, then those will be handled separately in a different warrant article, which could pass or fail, but the codification, the town has invested quite a bit of money in that process, so that's part of the reason for handling it as a separate warrant article. As I started to mention, the planning board did hold a public information meeting a couple of weeks ago and explained at the time there were 7 minor policy issues. At the last planning board meeting, based on public input in part, the board decided to pull noise regulation changes off this set of minor policy issues. And all through the process, we've been kind of looking at if issues get more complicated and can be handled through this fairly straightforward process, given the magnitude of the overhaul of the ordinance. The board was really concerned with getting bogged down in some issue. So if any of the issues are too complicated or controversial, what we'll do is basically hold it off until after the codification is complete and then take it up separately, such as with updating the noise regulations. So tonight, I'm going to walk you through 10 proposed administrative changes. First is the codification itself. So pretty much the land use ordinance is currently in a Microsoft Word format that every year, whenever changes are made, I manually go into the Word document and update it and then produce the PDFs, and then those are posted on the town website as an entire ordinance PDF. So it's not very user-friendly in terms of the ability of anyone to do searches and cross-referencing, and all of that will be put into the new digitized version, which will be much easier for the public to use and more effective for it. You will be able to download either Word or PDFs of the entire ordinance or the individual sections and articles. Another issue that we've just touched on would be 139 areas. The current ordinance, because it's just been written over several decades, contains a lot of typographical and grammatical errors. Those will be corrected. Extensive corrections will be made throughout the updated ordinance, and it will be checked for consistency as well, both internally, but also the consultants have identified several areas such as floodplain management and affordable housing requirements of the state that those need to be updated. And there are outdated citations to various trade journals, standards, like UL listings and those sorts of things that need to be updated. So this overview and update will address all of those inconsistencies. And then, as I said, the minor policies and the administrative changes in the last 2 boxes at the bottom of the rows, that's pretty much what we're looking at as separate from the codification itself. And these are areas necessitated by legal reviews, but there are also opportunities to look at and address recurring issues that come up during planning board project reviews. So as I stated, all of the minor policy issues will be treated separately from the technical codification of the ordinance. And again, here tonight, we're going to be reviewing the administrative changes, which provide the opportunity to streamline some of the processes the town uses to reduce costs and improve efficiency. And as I said, all of the administrative changes will be treated separately from the technical codification of the ordinance. So administrative change 1 is the digitized ordinance itself. The second administrative change is to update the town's road standards. And those have been reviewed by both the road commissioner and the town, Laurel Palmer, the town's engineering peer review. And one of the first areas is to look at the road classifications. Currently, the ordinance still follows the repealed road management policy, where the town, back in around 2005, basically established a growth area where the town would accept roads and all other roads outside of that were to be private. The town doesn't do that anymore, and so the standards will, in this new draft, will be based on the traffic levels, which is what most towns do. They don't have private roads and public roads. They have either minor local, or sub-collector, depending on the level of traffic anticipated to be using it. And correspondingly, right now the town has straight 50 feet right of way for all roads. If you go to a sub-collector with a wider road for very large projects, then the right of way is typically expanded to make more room to fit everything within it. Pavement widths, currently it's 22 feet for what are called public roads and 20 feet for private roads. This would follow the 20 feet for a minor local road, 22 feet for a local, and then 24 feet for any sub-collectors. And the reality is sub-collectors are most likely not to be built in Durham because they serve like over 100 homes, one road. And many communities have collector roads and arterials like Portland, but certainly you're not going to see any collector roads like Quaker Meeting House Road or some of the other major roads, or arterials like the state routes. So all we really need in the subdivision regulations are the actual classifications of roads that are going to be built. Shoulder width currently, it's 4 feet for public roads and 2 feet for private roads. The town's peer review engineer suggested that 2 feet would be appropriate for all roads. Currently, the ordinance establishes that before a building permit can be issued on any of the lots within a subdivision, the entire road must be completed except for paving. The proposed revision is to say that the road must be completed up to the lot where a building permit is requested. And then, as long as the fire chief verifies to the code officer that it's fully accessible by public safety emergency vehicles, then they would be able to get that building permit even though the road is not complete. Current policy also says that if a road is serving 3 or fewer lots, then it can be retained as a gravel road. But it goes on to say that anything above that has to be paved. So what's come up in the past is that you have an extension of that road, gravel road, serving 3 lots, and there's been a lot of confusion. Do you pave it from the main road, or do you pave it from after the 3 lots, which doesn't make sense. So this would say that if you go beyond the 3 lots, then the whole road must be paved out to the main road. And then the next issue is the road base. Currently, the ordinance talks about aggregate base and aggregate sub-base, with 6 inches for the aggregate base and 12 for the sub-base. The Public Works Director said that really doesn't make sense, and you should have 3 inches of surface gravel and 15 inches of base gravel. So based on his recommendation, that's what the ordinance would say. Similarly, culverts are very outdated. It talks in here about 12-inch zinc-coated metal pipe. Pretty much the industry standard now is high-density polyethylene, with and the Public Works Director says it should be, Road Commissioner, says it should be 15 inches minimum. And obviously, the planning board has authority to grant waivers, so if there is a condition where it doesn't make sense to go with that large of a culvert because it's at the top of grade and there's ledge there, then the planning board can grant relief to that. Parking is currently contained in the subdivision appendix, and really the only time that comes into play is when you start dealing with commercial uses. So this proposed revision will move the parking standards to site plan review, which is where you'd be looking at calculating parking requirements for various non-residential uses. The ordinance currently allows turnarounds at the driveways on turnarounds, which causes problems for plowing. Both the town engineer and the road commissioner indicate that those driveways should either be prohibited or at least closely monitored and approved by the road commissioner. So that's the proposal in this draft, is to say that if you're going to put a driveway on a turnaround, then you have to get the road commissioner to approve it so he can make sure that it's going to not interfere with snow plowing operations. And then finally, on the road standards is the issue of entrance site distances. Currently, there are site distances in the road subdivision road appendix. There's, as we'll go on and show in the next administrative change when it comes to driveways, there's a separate listing of site distances. And neither of those are consistent with the MDOT standards. So this proposes to This proposes to have all of the site distances included, and then to simply match the MDOT standards, so there's no confusion. So that is the limit of what is being considered in the subdivision road standards. We've provided the summary, which this was taken from, and the actual text of the changes is available on the website. So just keep those down there. And with that, I conclude the presentation and open it up.
So you're going with the codification process?
Oh, I'm sorry, did I jump right through? I'm sorry.
I
I jumped ahead.
I was like-
Go for a second. So does anybody have any comments or
Yeah.
questions or concerns on the first
Sorry.
issue we talked about, which was editorial changes to the codification process?
I have a question. Mike Abbott, Garrish Lane, 51 Garrish Lane. It doesn't relate to this first page though. We just,
Does it have to do with the first issue that George brought up regarding the codification process?
no, sorry.
Okay, so then I'm gonna back up or move forward.
Right.
Any questions or comments to the subdivision road standards,
All right.
administrative changes?
Okay. Mike Abbott, 51 Garrish Lane.
Thank you.
Just the question, George, was this proposed reclassification of the roads for subdivisions. I know that some of the minor policy changes we discussed at the last meeting, the requirements are based on whether a road is considered public or private. So are these reclassifications just for within a subdivision or is for the entire town?
Well,
And how would they affect the proposed policy changes?
okay, so what would happen is this would primarily apply to new roads that are being built in subdivisions. It's in the subdivision regulations. However, what we talked about as the minor policy issue is updating the backlot, multiple lot access standards, and those currently refer to the subdivision appendix and road standards. So currently, if you have a 5-lot, what Durham calls a backlot, multiple lot access road, most towns call that a private way. It's outside of the subdivision, doesn't trigger subdivision. That requires the construction to meet the standards for what is currently private roads, which is the 20 feet with 2-foot shoulders. And what this will do is still have that as a minor local street. So it will meet those standards, but it won't be called private anymore. It'll be called either a minor local, that would be most likely what you'd be building with a private way serving 5 lots.
Okay.
So basically, it ends up being the same standard.
Right, I get that, I think. So currently, if you look at the map, of the road map for the town, there's private and, well, roads are, I think if they're a certain color, they're public or private, right? So Are they still, is the map gonna change to?
No, because all of the maps, as I think I explained to you in an email, all the map does is reflects two things. It reflects the assessing records,
Right,
and it reflects the 911 addressing.
right,
So the road names are for those two purposes. And the public works, the road commissioner has a map of all the roads in town in terms of who maintains what. And there are gravel roads, there are paved roads, there are paved roads that the town maintains, there are paved roads that are maintained by private subdivision associations, and there are paved roads that the state maintains. And so all of those will remain the same. All this applies to is when new roads are constructed. They will have to meet these standards, whether it's in a subdivision or in a private way. This is purely for the construction of new roads, not reclassification of existing roads out.
okay. So if a new road is built off a, say, a private way or a public way, and
Yeah.
will that now not be a private way, it will be a minor local road? It just seems like we're adding complication.
Well, you can't get away from complication when you're dealing with road issues. That's just a reality.
But the policies that we talked about, okay, I'm not trying to,
Yeah,
I don't have any,
understood.
I'm
There is
just
a-
trying to understand, that's all.
Yeah. And there is overlap.
Right, those policies are based on, the requirements are based on whether a road is a private way or a public road. So it just seems like now we're gonna have new roads that are neither public or private, they have these other classifications. So how do those policies apply or not apply to those new types of roads?
Actually, I don't think that's accurate in that those policies don't depend on whether it's a private road or a public road. They depend on whether it's a road meeting the definition, legal definition of a road. Whether you can do a backlot off it or not doesn't relate to, is it classified as a public road or a private road? It's just if it's a road, and if you have legal rights to it, either because it's a public road where everybody has rights to it, or it's a private way where people who own it give you permission to extend off it, that's a separate issue from the construction standards that we're talking about. What you're dealing with is legal rights to develop these. That's a different issue than what construction standards they have to build to. Here, all we're talking about is the construction standards.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? Can we move on to the next?
You want to do that, or do you want a board discussion at the end on all of them?
I think we have discussion after each one. I think it's probably more efficient. It didn't seem like there was any more comments or discussions.
Okay. Move on?
Please.
Okay, so the next issue, along the same lines, is the current driveway standards for the town. And the first thing that's very confusing is the current wording which says that the driveway standards apply to all town quote-unquote roads. And so the question becomes, the road commissioner has been confused as to whether he's supposed to be issuing driveway permits on state roads, state-maintained roads, town-maintained roads, or private association-maintained roads. And the ordinance isn't clear, because a town road, does that mean any road in town, or does it mean roads that are maintained by the town? So that confusion will be cleared up by saying that the driveway standards and the requirement for a driveway permit will apply to any road over which the town has jurisdiction, either through town maintenance of it or through a planning board approval of it. Those are the roads that the road commissioner will have authority to require a driveway permit on. And it will clarify that the town does not issue driveway permits where the Maine Department of Transportation issues the driveway permit. So it will only be required for roads that are under the jurisdiction of the town. Second issue is the safe site distances. I mentioned just on the roads that right now the tables are inconsistent, and both with the ones that are in the ordinance as well as with MDOT standards. So this will make everything consistent with MDOT standards. Right now, the driveway grade at the road entrance, which is from the pavement shoulder and then through the right of way, this ordinance currently allows a 10% grade to intersect with the road, which is a formula for someone on a slippery day skidding out into the roadway, or trying to gun up over a hill onto the roadway. So most communities have within the road right of way, some extend it further, no more than 3% grade. So that's pretty much the safety standard that's recommended. And again, the town engineer and the road commissioner have reviewed these and support these recommendations. The road commissioner currently, if you have the safest intersection angle, if you come out onto a road, is a 90-degree, which requires someone to stop, look both ways, and then pull out. You can, in certain situations, whether property boundaries or others indicate a need to have some angle to it. Generally, the safety standard by traffic design is 75-degree minimum, but the current ordinance says it can go below 75 if the road commissioner approves it, which could open up the town to liability issues if it's not following sound safety criteria. So this would require all driveways to be at least the minimum safety standard of 75 degrees from perpendicular. The paving of the driveway apron currently, it says that if the grade exceeds 5%, it must be what they call the apron, which is the area within the road right of way. The road commissioner has said that doesn't make sense. If the roadway is paved, then the apron should be paved regardless of the grade, and if the road is not paved, then it doesn't make sense to pave the apron. So that's his recommendation that we've put into the ordinance. Erosion controls are repeated in the driveway standards section as well as elsewhere in the ordinance, so this will simply put in a reference to the erosion control standards that are contained, that apply to every other use. And I think that was it for the driveway changes.
Any public comments on the driveway standard changes? From the board?
Well, the one question when I look at the paving of the driveway apron, it doesn't specify how deep that should be. I mean, is it a minimum of 2 feet, is it a minimum of 5 feet?
It would be whatever's within the right of way of the road. So it's typically a car length from the edge of the pavement. That's pretty much typical.
It's not kind of
Did that answer your question, Alan?
Well, one of the apron, when I see, when the town resurfaces roads and they do aprons on driveways, those aprons only look like they're a foot, 2 feet at the most. They don't look that deep to me. I know that it's not looking, it's, if anybody observed that, they'd realize that is not, certainly isn't 8 or 10 feet, 12
It
feet.
should be everything within the road right of way, because that's where the jurisdiction of the town ends, is at the road right of way.
And you talking about the depth.
Yes.
So all 4 wheels are sitting on asphalt when they're taking off
Right,
out of the subdivision
right.
or private road. Should be at least 20 feet up there.
Yeah, I'm just, the reason I question it, because I don't believe it's being adhered to.
That's
Or a recommendation to change it, and that's why I'm saying I think there should be a distance of feet, the depth of that.
So
Okay, I can look into that and make sure that it's specified.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir? Bob Valier, 250 Stockport Road. Did you, regarding private ways. Did the lawyer have anything to say about, maintenance agreements on private roads?
Are you specifically referring to a subdivision?
No?
To any
A
private
private
road?
way. A private way maintenance.
You want me to address that, Mr. Chairman?
Please do.
Okay, so I think it's important to recognize that the current ordinance is what we're starting with, and a change in policy to say that maintenance agreements for private roads would not be required would be a policy change that we've not discussed. I understand that the town attorney sees problems with if someone is going off an existing private road or way that does not have a maintenance agreement, then to impose that on the existing property owners is questionable. However, under the ordinance, both what's currently in place and what's proposed is that whoever's proposing to extend or establish a private way that others use currently, they are required to make an offer to the other property owners to participate, but it does not stop them once they've made the offer and record an affidavit to that effect, they can go forward. So that was her one main concern with it, is if you require everybody that's in there to become part of the maintenance agreement, and they're already there, then you can basically stop someone from doing their private way that's being proposed that they may have a legal right to do. But when she heard that, the town basically says, you're not required to join it, you're just required to make the offer, she was okay with it.
So our attorney has looked into this, and it's a response.
Is there any policy changes? We've got plenty of other policy changes. My problem is, maintenance agreement is between individuals. It has nothing to do with the town, because the town isn't gonna take care of it. The town's not gonna take care of any private road. And you're imposing standards, sure, but as far as maintenance, they're not taking care of it. Town's not taking
If
care
the
of it.
board considers that that's an inappropriate exercise of public policy, then you can consider that and make that as another policy change. I think that would maybe be more than a minor policy change if you're gonna say, does it only apply to private ways outside of subdivisions, or
I
does
don't
it,
think so.
or does it apply to roads in subdivisions? Because
Sure.
right now, the town requires all subdivision roads to have a maintenance agreement.
Sure. Subdivision. Yeah. But there are plenty of private roads out there with no maintenance agreement, and we all take care of ourselves. We don't need the planning board or anybody else to tell us what to do.
I know that we, as a planning board, we've had some individuals come to us and ask about maintenance agreement, and they were looking for recommendations as to what to do. And if you have a couple of private road, dirt road, and there are two or three parties that own that, we just bring to their attention that if someone sells a piece of property on that road and prior owners were in a maintenance agreement, they need to be aware that they're responsible for maintaining it. But that again is amongst those individuals that own the road.
What if most private roads have no maintenance agreement?
I know that's true. There's been very few people that have come to the planning board and asked for recommendations. I can only think of one, actually.
I recommend that we can talk more about this maybe at our next meeting, but this might be more than a minor policy, might be something that we wanna pick up next year. you know,
The whole issue of maintenance agreements.
yes, like I think that we want a little bit more time to figure this out.
Yeah.
Smartly.
I think depending on our agenda for next month, we can add it to our agenda just to briefly talk
Yeah.
about some of the highlights and see where we can go from there. But it's separate from this.
It's an important issue, but I feel like we don't have enough time.
No.
to have a discussion.
No, I appreciate the comment.
Yep.
Todd, we'll keep it on our agenda and see where it goes from there.
Thanks.
Sure. Any other comments on driveway standards? Questions? I think we can move on, George.
Okay, so number four is the shift of responsibility and authority for determining the precise boundary of the location of zoning districts from the Board of Appeals to the Planning Board. Currently, under the ordinance, if there's a dispute over where the boundary is, like say the edge of the Resource Protection District, on the zoning map, the line itself is probably at a scale of 100 feet just for the width of the line. So whenever there's a question, someone's gonna be building very close to that, or they need to have a determination of they need more buildable land on a lot, they can actually appeal currently to the Board of Appeals, and what they do is they hire a consultant, surveyor, engineer, wetland specialist to come in with documentation, and the Board of Appeals has authority to establish where that boundary is. Since I've been working with the town, about 7 years now, there have been 4 occasions where it came before the board, and I think one of the property owners is actually sitting here tonight. The Board of Appeals just really struggled with the whole issue and the concept, because they felt that really it's a change to the zoning map, which they thought has to go to the town meeting. But most communities that I've worked with have this field determination of boundaries vested with the planning board. The planning board's more used to dealing with these types of technical issues and working with consultants. It has professional staff assistants that the Board of Appeals typically, and the Board of Appeals meets like once or twice a year at most. So the planning board, in terms of having the availability of the board to deal with this, it just makes a lot more sense to have the planning board make this determination rather than the Board of Appeals. And that is the proposal that's being put forth right now.
Any public comment, questions?
Just a clarifying question, Mike Abbott, 51 Garris Lane.
Thank you.
This, being clear, this isn't to propose changes to zoning, this is just to interpret the current zoning maps. and
Exactly,
how
how
they-
it applies on a
On a
individual
particular
property.
property, okay, thank you.
Any others from the public? From the board? Questions, comments? No, this makes sense to me. Thank you, George.
Okay, proposed administrative change 5 is the subdivision solid waste containers. Currently, there have been issues on multiple subdivisions where the concern was that the town's waste hauler would not serve the subdivision. And so Winfield, I think it's Wingate Farms on Royalsboro Road, if you drive by there on trash day, you'll see the containers right out on Royalsboro Road, which has a 50-mile-an-hour speed limit at that point. So it's, the planning board has dealt with this and struggled with it, and so currently there are no stipulations on where trash containers can be located when the subdivision is approved. Under the proposal, it would have to be at the curbside within the subdivision, or the developer would have to submit a plan for waste management that would show how it's going to be handled. Currently, there is no plan required, and this would either require a readiness to serve from Casella or whoever, and this is very typical in more urban communities, suburban communities, where you have to get a readiness to serve from the Portland Water District, for example, or the sewer district. So here, you get a readiness to serve letter from the solid waste management company that's doing the towns, and if they, for some reason, are not willing to drive their vehicles up that road, then the developer would have to come up with a plan And that plan would actually include, right now there are no restrictions where they can be located. That plan would actually indicate that you would not be allowed outside of the subdivision. So they would have to, perhaps they'd have a commercial hauler, an association, they'd have a gated, what do they call those, the trash bins, the larger, can't think of them. Dumpsters. Yeah, they have 2 dumpsters for the subdivision, everybody throw the trash in there, commercial hauler comes and gets it once a week. So they would have to get a plan, submit it with their subdivision application, and the planning board would approve it. Hopefully, they would all be readiness to serve letters, but this will cover that if that's not forthcoming.
Comments from the public? Yes, sir.
Todd Boyer, 250 Stackpole Road. I'm on the solid waste committee, so I know a little bit about this, but Casella, to go down a private road, Casella has to be totally indemnified from any damage to the road. Their 100,000-pound trucks are going to do damage to every private road in Durham. Every one of them. So, I don't see. I think it would make more sense. This is something that would have to be worked out. I think it would make more sense to run there with a smaller truck and to pick up trash in subdivisions and private roads. Because, as I said, you get a truck, 100,000-pound trash truck going down the road every week, whether it's February, March, April, August, they're gonna do damage. And Casella doesn't feel that they're liable for anything, so that leaves it to the homeowners to repair their own road. And I think there's a better way.
So I guess the way I see this is, we're asking the developer
Yeah.
to
Come up
reach
with a
out
plan.
to Casella, whomever the waste management company is, to agree that they'll go into the subdivision and pick up waste. I don't know, are there any issues now in subdivisions where there's been damage to roads in this situation?
Well, they don't go in private, so, on a private way, they won't go on. I think it's gonna come out with new subdivisions, but I think there's a better way of doing it.
Do we leave that for the homeowners, for the subdivisions, for the HOAs to decide? Right, like if
Yeah.
they do want a small truck, they can get a small
Yeah.
truck to come down there, right?
Yeah.
Or if they would want to sell it, but, I mean, I think you're right, I think they are,
It's not only subdivisions, it's every private
or
road.
private ways, right?
All this would apply is subdivisions that come before the planning board.
Yeah, but Casella's policy extends to every private road.
Right, so if Casella won't serve it, so they won't get a letter, they'll have to come up with a plan, that can be submitted to the planning board.
But
The other option is to, as you mentioned earlier, is to come up with a place where maybe there's a dumpster that's fenced in at the end of the road, where the solid waste hauler doesn't have to go into the subdivision private way.
Well, one issue from Casella, they're going to go to the mechanized arm, and I don't know, the smallest truck that would even exist to do that. I mean, because they're gonna go out and they're gonna purchase new vehicles. It's a good question.
Or a truck that would put the dumpster away, though.
Well, if you had a dumpster, it would have to be a dumpster,
For multiple homes.
that would have to be a dumpster truck, not the one that they're gonna be using with the roadside pickup. It would be a separate truck.
That was gonna be a heavy truck.
Mm-hmm.
Where do we stand with timing on all of this? I mean, we have this proposal that's, looking to be presented to the town in the summer. Where's the Casella contract
March.
deadline? So that's happening sooner, right? So it's
March.
It was moved up.
moved up, right? So it sounds like there's a select board,
Yes.
solid waste committee, whoever signs the contract with Casella, that needs to be worked out.
Yeah, but you
We
gotta
need to know
decide,
the details before we can say what's gonna happen here.
It's also a really good point too, and I know that the select board's talking with Casella, I think December 9th or something, so it's coming up. But that is a really good point. We're gonna want to align on what's
Absolutely.
happening, yeah.
What does the contract say? What are they willing to do? What are they not willing to do? George, maybe this one at the table.
Well, yeah, sorry, I have one more thing too to add. So the topic, the name of this change is subdivision solid waste container storage admin change. If it is referring to private ways as well, should we make it, or is this just?
This is just for
This is just subdivision.
It's only in the subdivision regulations.
Okay, so for private ways then, we're just not covering that right now?
No.
Okay, so that will cover maybe later next year?
Well, that's a completely separate issue.
Right, separate,
This is an
okay, so
issue
this
that
is
is-
just
Yeah,
subdivisions,
this is an
not
issue that's
private
come
ways.
up on multiple subdivisions.
Yes, okay, all right, I just wanted to make that clear, okay, thank you.
but it's gonna come up with Casella,
Yeah,
because we've got more private ways than we have public roads.
I understand the I understand the concept of, if that doesn't happen, if that's not in the contract, then, either way, it changes how you need to look at what happens in this pickup.
The way I understand it, it's gonna drive up the side of the can. The arms come off the side of the truck, pick it up. It's supposed to know what's in there. It should be interesting. It'd be fun to watch. Especially during frost season.
So what this is saying is, aside from that, the developers or the subdivision needs to figure out how they're gonna deal with trash, regardless of whether it's a sidearm or not.
And the big thing is it prohibits it on the main roads. They can't put their containers out along Royalboro Road under this ordinance.
You mean with like state roads or?
Yeah,
Well, it
really
says
outside the subdivision.
Just
outside
state roads
subdivision.
Pardon me?
Just state roads or any road?
Look at the language.
you mean the right of way, right, like 136, it would be the right of way of 136, has to stay out of that. That's what you're saying? What we're saying?
Say any town road.
Allowed on roads outside of subdivision.
Okay, so the language that's currently in there now says collection within subdivisions. All new subdivisions shall implement a solid waste and recycling collection system that ensures waste and recycling containers are collected from within the subdivision, either in front of individual homes on privately owned and maintained roads or at a designated centralized facility. Under no circumstances shall solid waste or recycling containers from properties within a subdivision be placed on main public roads or state routes for collection. So that would pretty much be most of the town collector roads. And we can specify more if you think it's necessary.
And when we say roads, we also mean right of ways, right? Like the right of way associated with,
Well, the language says it has to be done within the subdivision.
so that's outside the right of way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Any other comments here? Are we good to go to move forward with this, or is there more discussion? Yeah.
Well, and that way we know what Casella's doing before we can even really discuss it ourselves.
It sounds to me like it doesn't matter what that contract is, this is related to subdivisions and what they do within the subdivision, correct?
That is true.
The contract is gonna be with the town properties, not outside, regardless of the subdivision, or I should say, outside the subdivision. Right?
You could give further consideration to this as we go on in the process. And this is just getting the public input on what the planning board has proposed.
Yeah.
It's still gonna go from here through probably March, maybe even April with the codification process and discussions with the select board, so we don't have to resolve it tonight.
Okay.
Yeah, let's keep talking about it.
Yeah, no, I think it's good to keep it as is, I don't think there's any major changes we need to make to it tonight. We'll just follow it and see what happens through March.
Yeah.
Alright.
Okay, administrative change number 6 is the scope of campground reviews. And the goal here is to streamline the process, where right now the planning board and the state of Maine both approve campground construction and expansions. And what these changes do will pretty much limit the focus of the planning board to Durham's issues, which are primarily zoning related, and leave the sanitation and environmental reviews to the state. So currently, the planning board does a conditional review, conditional use review of a campground, construction or expansion, the establishment, and the planning board looks at it under the general criteria of potential impacts on noise, traffic, drainage, and visual quality, and that will continue under the proposed revisions. But what happens now is the planning board is, under the ordinance, is required to give a site plan approval to the campground. And the site plan review standards of Article 8 look at really more commercial installations, and so it deals with parking lot lighting, parking requirements, traffic circulation, and engineering design. Campground is a whole different creature. And so then it goes to the state where they do a full review of all the engineering. So the most recent campground, the person was up at Vesta for almost 2 years, and the planning board required them to bring back the engineering plans that the state approved, and that's the basis on which you granted it. So this would basically keep a conditional use review, then they go get their state permits, and the state deals with all of those issues of campground, sanitation, environmental, and campground management. They have campground licensing that deals with that. So this would specifically exempt a campground from going through site plan review, and would not have regulations where the town is monitoring their client list, all of that, those things that are done by the state. And the state will continue to do what it has been doing and does quite well. So that's the proposal.
Jennifer Tagbird on Bowie Hill Road. So right now, the town of Durham defines campground different than the state of Maine. The state of Maine defines campground as 5 or more sites. The town of Durham defines campground as more than one site. I'm wondering if you consider to align the state of Maine's definition, because then it creates this kind of gray zone that exists where if you're under 5 sites, you're not actually a campground by the state of Maine, but you're a campground defined by the town of Durham. And it seems like it's, makes for particularly given the more kind of small couple site campgrounds that people do through pit camp or other services like that, that it creates a kind of prohibitive barrier for that for folks that are looking to do that. And it just seems like if you're going through the process of kind of aligning this at the state and town level, then having a shared definition of campground would be important.
Yeah, I think that's something we can look into. Yeah, I didn't realize that.
So we would need to look at the gray area between
1 and
1 and 5.
Yeah, I think I was trying to go through the land use ordinance, and I think the town says, right now, it's like you have one campsite, that's not a campground, but if you're at 2, that's a campground, and you have to do all these things at the state level. I just looked at the state says 5 or more is when it's considered to be a campground.
So what's less than 5, I wonder? What's less than
Just
5?
having some campsites. It's
Yeah.
not, it's not, I mean, it doesn't say anything at the state level, but it's not a license, like, if you had less than 5 sites, the state wouldn't give you the license.
Okay, I say we talk about this further next. I don't know if we wanna ask somebody
We can look into those
or just look
definitions.
into it. Okay, yeah, thank you.
Any other comment from the public? Board?
It's a good point.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Thank you, John. Moving on back to the agenda, next thing we do is, trying to define the gray area. From the definition, please.
Number 7 is the planning board deadlines and submissions. The amendments would provide the planning board and staff an additional week to process subdivision and conditional use applications. Currently, the deadline for getting on the next available planning board agenda is 14 days. I work part-time and it's very difficult, especially where we have to develop findings of fact, extensive pages of findings of fact. It's very difficult to meet these deadlines. So most communities have at least 21 days, some have a full month, and that is the proposal, to give really the board and staff adequate time to thoroughly review applications. Similarly, right now, there is no deadline for if the board says something's missing, the developer or applicant can bring in the information at the next meeting, and the board has no time to review it, so they end up tabling it. So this would indicate that any resubmissions would have to be provided at least 14 days before the meeting, with time for processing that new information. And then in the opposite direction, right now, the ordinance requires 10 printed copies. Most of those we end up recycling because most of the planning board members are now using their computers and looking at digital versions. We do provide the printed copies to other staff in the Department of Public Works, as well as fire and code enforcement, but reducing it to 5 copies is probably more than adequate for the purposes we need to do that. So that's the proposed change number 7.
Any comments from the public? Questions?
No, basically, the developer, every time at all, to turn around for the next meeting. Usually we. And that's why it's at 14 days. So at least it gives you a chance to get requested material together for the next meeting. If you're gonna make the next meeting, you're not gonna make the next meeting in 21 days.
No. 14 days would be the resubmission. And those have to be sent out to the board at least 7 days before the meeting. So that would not give, if you had 7 days of submittal, the staff wouldn't even have time to review it. And it would go right to the planning board. So that's why this would give the staff a week to review whatever the new submittals give, and that can be corrected until the next annual town meeting. So for things like that, where it's clear there's an error, I think we renumbered when we did the solar contract zoning, so that moved things, so now the back lot access refers to section 5.23, it's now actually 5.24. Again, that can't be corrected until it goes to the next town meeting, so this change would give the select board recommendation of the planning board after review by the town attorney to make sure it's not making any substantive changes to what was approved at town meeting, but it would give the select board the authority to make corrections that are just purely corrections to the errors in the ordinance.
I have something real quick.
We
That's
should
okay.
go to the public.
Oh, so yes, first.
Any comments or questions on this one from the public?
Who's gonna decide?
What's minor, what's not?
That's minor.
Well, yeah,
Well,
just
it's coming to the board after they make these decisions, so I think there's a second set of eyes before it's finalized.
And that's actually my point, is if it is gonna go to the planning board first as a recommendation maybe, and then to the select board, perhaps we could just say that a little bit more in that.
again, these are just summaries to let people know the direction. The specific language is posted on the website, so after each of these summaries, the text of the proposed change is there. Here's what it says, this is a pretty short one. It says, this is under the administrating agencies of the select board. What it does, the select board, upon recommendation of the planning board and review by the town attorney, shall be authorized to make non-substantive corrections to the text of this ordinance, including but not limited to correcting typographical errors, misspellings, incorrect cross-references within the ordinance, and updating references to state statutory citations. I mean, there are 139 in the current codification, and those just have never been taken care of over 30 years. So that's kind of the purpose of this. Then it goes on to clarify, such corrections shall be limited to ensuring accuracy and consistency of the adopted text, and shall not alter the intent, meaning, or substantive provisions of any regulation enacted by voters at town meeting. The select board shall maintain a record of all such corrections made, including the date of the correction and a brief description of the change.
Pretty specific, you know.
Yeah, I would discuss this in the past, and I think maybe clarifies the intent.
And with plenty of cross-checks and safeguards.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
Okay, number 9, we got one more after this, and that is proof of payment of taxes. So one of the criteria for getting a conditional use permit or a subdivision approval is you have to show financial capacity. And if someone is not paying their taxes, that's prima facie evidence that they don't have the capacity. So what this will do is require that. There has been at least one case where a person did not have subdivision approved and did not pay the taxes on it for 2 years, anticipating that the lien process would take at least 3 years, and by that time they would have sold the subdivision and the new owners would pay for it. So this is kind of closing that loophole, and again, it's actually happened in Durham, and most towns do require proof of payment of taxes as a condition for getting a permit.
Questions or comments from the public? Yeah, any from the board? I have a question. So, if a developer comes in and they have a purchase and sales agreement for a property that's contingent on planning board approval, they're not the ones who are paying taxes on the property. So we would request proof that the current property owner is paying taxes on the property.
Good question.
So the developer hasn't bought the property yet?
We've seen it, just,
It's contingent on, yes, this being approved, but would they buy property in which taxes were owed?
I mean, that's a.
I get it's up to them.
But we're saying
Yeah.
that we are asking proof that the applicant has paid taxes, but the applicant doesn't actually own the property. The purchase and sale agreement is contingent on getting planning board approval. So, in essence, we're asking that the applicant proves that the current landlord property owner has paid their taxes.
It's a great
Well,
issue.
it's almost, if I was gonna be the buyer of that property, I would be making sure that the taxes I paid before I purchased that property. I mean, the responsibility lands on the buyer.
So a subdivision application could go on for a year, and the taxes could not, right? You would actually know that until the closing actually happens, and you're engaged with the closing attorney. And that whole process gets going. You're putting a trust in the fact that the property owner is paying the taxes before you actually buy it.
And that's actually gonna raise a legal question in terms of do they have full right, title, or interest? Because if are existing liens on the property, or the potential for a lien, then that triggers a whole nother issue. In terms of full right, title, or interest before the lien.
So they receive their planning board approval, they can move forward with purchasing the property, then they run into this other stumbling block where the taxes haven't been paid, or there's liens on it, and that's up to the developer to work that out after, right, with their issue. But, do we require then that the developer give us a waiver or ask for a waiver?
You actually could do that. The current Durham regulations give the planning board broad waiver authority, more than any other town that I've seen. And so if you have extenuating circumstances like that, you can negotiate something to, prior to release of the recording Mylar, for example, you could say the taxes must be paid. So you have the ability to work through those type of unique situations.
Case by case.
Yeah, I like this addition or enhancement to the ordinance. Just thinking it through.
Yes, very good situation. And we can spend more time thinking about that.
The second question is off my head, if you want to hear it, like, I just, listening to this discussion, I wanted, to confirm that the planning board cannot actually issue a permit to subdevelop a property until the ownership was settled, right? I mean, you can't get a permit to subdevelop someone else's property.
I mean, a building permit?
Well, I don't know. This is conditional use subdivision. This is for a proposed subdivision, right?
Or a conditional use permit. I can address that.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, under all land use law, they have what they call right, title, or interest.
Right.
So anyone who's going to be applying to administrative board or the planning board for a permit of any type, or even a code officer, they have to have some vested property right in that property that they're applying for. And that can be, they have an easement, which gives them a right to put something on there. They have a purchase and sale agreement, where it's a contractual agreement under specified terms, or they own it outright. But they have to demonstrate right, title, or interest to move forward the board in every case.
Okay. So it would be an actual, what likely situation is somebody could be proposing a conditional use or subdivision, and their right title interest is simply the purchase and sale agreement.
Yeah. And typically a purchase and sale agreement specifies what's going to happen to any taxes that are.
Right.
Yeah.
So that would be part of the record, and planning board can base it on that.
All right.
So, Jonah, I think are you here representing the agricultural committee?
Yes.
So they may want to just have a quick discussion with you about what they're working on, which I did provide in the last planning board agenda packet.
So I guess this is in addition to our agenda. The agriculture committee would like to present the definitions, discuss the definitions that they sent out to us, planning board package last couple weeks ago, November 2nd, maybe, I think it was. So this was not on our agenda originally, is everybody okay with adding this to the agenda? All right, and the public is more than welcome to sit. Again, it wasn't on the agenda. If you want to hear what the Ag Committee's been working on, and some of the definitions they're asking us to prepare for implementation to land use plans, you're more than welcome to stay. And I think we're okay with listen to comments from the public. Sure. Gentlemen?
Yeah, so the agriculture committee, which just your background, comes out of the commission, the comprehensive plan process called for the creation of the agriculture committee, which over the last 2 years, with the support of George and also with some support from Maine Farm Trust, we formed the committee last year, was to the select board, and the select board under the charter, the select board then approved the committee, and we reviewed the comprehensive plan, the 2018 comprehensive plan, looked at what was in there. One of the pieces of that was to review ordinances to look at essentially how to not limit agriculture in your own, and how to also
protection, the rural residential and agricultural, aquifer protection, shoreline zoning, both limited residential and resource protection. So in that table, it goes down through and specifies where agriculture is a permitted use and where it's a conditional use. Now, if you expand to add 6 other definitions, you have to decide where those will plug into the table and whether it will be permitted use or whether it will be a conditional use. And then when you get down into the performance standards, which is Article 5, currently, it's very limited. Basically, it talks about manure storage and spreading and disposal and buffers around water bodies. That probably needs to be looked at with some of these additional uses. In subdivision regulations, it only requires mapping of farmland soils, doesn't say what you can do or can't do in a subdivision. As we discussed in a recent cluster subdivision, if someone is proposing common open space, that would be an ideal part to include in the open space. But there are no regulations either in state law or local ordinance about subdivisions and how agriculture is treated within them. Then shoreline zoning has some special requirements protecting water quality, obviously. So they have some specifications in there. Again, aquifer protection has special limitations on pesticides and sludge spreading for concern about the impacts on aquifer. And then I think, then currently there are 3 definitions. And you're looking at about 8 or 9, I think, total. Which really get into, like you said, a lot of the modern applications of agritourism and those sorts of things. So definitely there's a need for updating it, but there's a lot more to it than just adding new definitions. So I did speak with Krista Chappelle, who's from the Maine Farmland Trust today, and she indicated that they have been available to the Agriculture Committee and will continue to do so if the Agriculture Committee wants to move forward with trying to get something on the next town meeting agenda, ballot, warrant, then they would support the Agriculture Committee in addressing these other areas and trying to put together a proposal. So if the Agriculture Committee, working with support of the Maine Farmland Trust, can put together a complete package, then that could be considered possibly at the next town meeting. It would probably take some pretty dedicated time to get all of that put together. If not, I don't think just adding the definitions would change anything, because it would just be a set of definitions that don't apply anywhere. So if it's not possible to work on that short a time frame between now and probably the very latest the town would have to finalize what it's proposing would be like April, then it would have to be put off probably further in the year.
So, to clarify, so if we take these definitions and then look at the land use table and say, here's, here's where we make these proposed changes to the land use table. Getting that, can you repeat that timeline? It's April, but I'm not clear what.
Well, right now, the planning board is going to be submitting all of these changes that have been worked on over the last summer and fall, now having the public input process. And these are going to be presented to the select board in January. The codification
too, just to, again, to really, I mean, we feel, our charter is to be guided by the comprehensive plan, and so, the board is obviously adjourned following the comprehensive plan, and taking those not as just nice things to say, but actually how do we put them into action, so that's what we're trying to do here. So, I mean, I think, Krista made from the trust is a great resource. We also have a great committee as well with a lot of experience farming here in Durham. So, people that have been through that. So, I guess I can, go back to the committee if we can plan to work on those ordinance changes. Like if we get those in, so this is where the confusion, like, do we get those to you, do we get those to you, do we get it to the select board? I said these definitions a while ago, and it was a little bit, I know people didn't get them, and then until just before the last meeting, so I'm just wondering, how do we get to the people?
Ultimately, it's the select board that decides whether to put something on the town meeting warrant. So they pretty much delegated to your committee putting something together. And typically it goes to the select board and then it's referred to the planning board if they want to pursue it. So, and the other thought, just following up on our earlier discussion of this, if you could scale it down to what is essential for change immediately, and do that on this town meeting, and then after that, work on other stuff that is less critical, more expansive, then obviously the less controversial potentially it is, the better it's going to be. So maybe just some food for thought and moving forward. But ultimately, I pretty much channel the information to all the groups. So if you want to send it to my attention, I can forward it on to. And usually we send it both to the select board as well as the planning board chair.
Yeah, I mean, probably, at this point, to you, to Joe Roy, to, there's less telephone and.
Yeah, and in the past, there's been really good collaboration. We've worked hard at that between the Conservation Commission, the Planning Board, the Select Board. So your group is new, and it's but there should be hopefully good cooperation between all groups. We're trying to pull together to get the comprehensive plan implemented.
George would be this conduit to start with. I agree. There's some low-hanging fruit that we can tackle sooner. But it's important, I think, we all recognize that there's some ordinance changes that need to be considered with these definitions. I'd rather see it as a complete package than just throw a bunch of definitions out there.
And depending on what you come up with, the board will have to consider, are these just administrative changes? Are these minor policy changes? Or are they major policy changes? And if you can put together administrative and minor policy changes, that probably works better with limited time frame available.
Okay, I'm not sure which ones are which.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe, do you have any guidance? Can you give some further clarification of what minor versus major?
Well, I was just noticing that there's two definitions that are already in the ordinance, agriculture and then agricultural land management. So, and I took a quick look through it, they look very similar. I'm not sure if they're exact, but if there's a little tweaking for those, I think that would be pretty minor, but to find something that's already in the ordinance.
That would probably just be administrative.
Or admin, very
You're
minimal.
going to add agritourism, for example. That may be a major policy issue, because if you think about Pineland and what they do.
But it just to say, you brought that up, we're not talking Highland here, we're talking about, being able to.
You may not be thinking that, but if it's the definition, you are.
Yeah, but I think it's also important not to raise them as the example of agritourism, because there's existing examples of agritourism in the town of Durham that exist. And so, it's like saying Highland, that it's first of all, they're a corporate complex.
Would they meet the definition
kind of like comes to the planning board, like, oh, we don't know how to deal with that, or what to do with it, so we're trying to get to that place of like, how can, when these proposals come forward, there's clarity and cooperation, working together to get right-sized operations. So, our goal here is not to say, any and all agritourism is, you can do anything, like, just put this in here, and there's nothing but really to get
That's where the
a good
definitions and the
Yeah.
standards become critical.
Yeah.
To say what you can do and what you can't do.
Also a note too, like if agritourism is one example of like a definition that we're not really talking about much yet, we haven't seen much of yet. We are going to need to update the comprehensive plan within the next couple of years, so I know it might be longer than we might want, but it might be a good pairing, right, is to start talking about these things and plan to include in the comp plan, and then we can go from that, right, because that's going to include public meetings and lots of talk about these topics, and people get more interested and more educated about these topics in that process.
Yeah, I mean, I hear that again, I do know from the committee that this is an important one to try to move forward sooner, because again, it's already happening in Durham, so how do we support it in an effective way? Whether it's having weddings at a farm, or having, a pig roast, or doing events or workshops at a farm, like how do we, do that in a way that's, clear and farm, so we end up in these limbo zones where it's unclear how they proceed with it. So I think that is something that is important for us to move forward sooner and have the right guardrails and the right regulation around it so that we can do it effectively and meet the needs of the town.
And the clearer it is, the easier it is for the planning board to process it.
I also hear there's some economic development opportunities. The comp plan, we currently says that economic development should have been a short-term goal, but I don't think we hit. And as Julia mentioned, that we're up for an update soon. So I mean, they coalesce a little bit, between the chapters in the comp plan. So I think it's important to look at both and how they align together. And the employee housing, I'm sorry, I'm getting this wrong, the term wrong.
Agriculture and employee housing.
That's going to be a major issue to talk about.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, again, I think recognizing there's, further education and, to look at, like, what Scarborough, what other towns that have Turner. I think this one was actually based on Turner's code, and we also did Scarborough, so to be able to look at what they've done, as one of the tools to both, because we have a huge labor shortage on farms in Maine, and obviously a housing crisis. And so how do we, create housing that can be affordable to farm members, farm workers, so that would be an important piece to really think about. And, but yeah, how does it fit in with everything else?
Yeah, we've been struggling with affordable housing for a couple of years now. As soon as we adopted the latest state ordinances and approved something at the town meeting, then the state changed the rules again. So it's going to happen.
They changed the rules, it costs money.
So the issue that we're on top of, I want to make sure that it aligns with what's in the ordinance today.
But I'd be willing, on the board, I'm sure everyone else here would as well, to be, to any plan that you propose, the committee proposes. I do worry about time though. I don't know when we need to have things final, maybe March or April or something, but it's gonna fly by, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we could potentially get something done. I mean, we've been talking about it a lot, so it's, there's a lot of shared understanding.
I think we recognize it's important, we want to move forward, and then George would be the best Civil engineer?
Right, Joe Morrow.
Joe Morrow.
And I anticipate somebody to develop one of those would be very soon.
Right.
And it is open to the public if they decide to come.
Could we take a second to just talk about the next meeting? December 3rd, right, is our next meeting. I just found out I'm gonna be out of town that week, so I won't be able to make it. We already have a small team here, so are you out that week too? Oh, okay,
So there would be a
there would be a quorum. So how about we propose, are you back the next week? I'm back the next week, so